when I signed up for Com 107 last semester, I just expected any other gen ed class. I didn't think it was going to be that important. I figured it was just one of those requirements that the university had to make you take. But I realized how wrong I was after this semester, and that might sound cliche, that might sound like I'm saying it just to get a good grade, but I honestly mean it. Com 107 was one of the most important classes I've ever taken. Over the course of Com 107, I was able to see the areas where I could improve and not only learn new things, but make the things that I thought I already knew more effective. I could be a better communicator overall. I learned how to listen better, how to work in groups, how to deal with conflict, how to communicate even when you think you're not communicating, and all these areas where I needed improvement, I really feel like I did improve. And these techniques that I've acquired over the semester, I can use in everyday life, in my academic life, in my personal life, in my professional life, and in any way that I interact in my community. And I intend to use these skills to make myself a better communicator. To be more specific, I'll give an example or two of one of the concepts I've learned in this course and explain how I will apply it to my everyday life. So I'll begin with my academic life. So, for starters, in my academic life, I could apply what I learned about listening and working in groups. In chapter 4, they talk about listening and how the average American talks about 125 to 200 words per minute, but you can only listen to about 100 words. So when you're communicating your message, you have to figure out a way to condense your message because it's been proven that we don't like to listen very much. And as for groups, I learned all the different roles that I didn't even know existed in a culture of a group. There's leaders, there's collaborators, there's bosses, there's self-professors, there's different kinds of leaders, and you have to be able to work with different kind of people. So you're going to have to be able to adapt based on the group that you're in. And there's always going to be different kinds of groups. There's committees, there's families, there's focus groups. It all depends on the person and the kind of group that you're in. But I've learned that I am a collaborator. I like to make everybody happy, but I also like to get my ideas out there as well because I want to benefit the group. Of course, listening and working in groups doesn't just apply to my academic life. For example, that could apply to my professional life as well. In chapter 8, though, they discuss the interview, which I think includes both of these concepts, interviewing, working in groups, and being a good listener, because what I've learned about interviewing is that the interviewee is just as important as the interviewer. You have to ask the right kind of questions, you have to listen to the responses that they're giving you, and you have to be able to understand what they're saying to later write up your report about it. But it all depends on the questions you're asking and how you're going about asking them, because you have to keep your interviewee interested. Sometimes, or I know I did at least, we often forget that communication doesn't just apply to formal interviewing and business related matters, but it also applies to our personal life. For example, conflict management. In chapter 7, it discussed things such as like empathy and apologizing and requesting information rather than demanding it. And I feel like this was a very vital part of the course because it helps you in your personal life, your friendships, your relationships, not just with your family members, but your teachers. It's kind of like a building block to the rest of communication. I have to know when I've messed up, and I know how I have to mend that. And then I learned that there's like steps to apologizing, and there's a lot of other components that like I would have never known about unless I read the book and I went to class. So I'm actually very grateful for Com 107 because not only does it improve my academic and professional life, but it also aids me in my success with my personal life as well. My career plans as of today, because it always changes, is that I want to be involved in politics and law. So a big part of politics and law is persuasiveness. And in chapter 15, they really talk about the persuasive speech and how I have to appeal to emotion using pathos. I have to establish myself as a credible source through ethos, and I have to present a message that's logical. So that's logos. And this triangle is the foundation of a persuasive argument. If I can't persuade the jury or the judge or the people of America to vote for me, then I'm not doing something right. So in Com 107, I really understood and grasped the concept of persuasiveness. You are not a good lawyer if you can't be persuasive. So that's how I'm going to apply that to my community-based endeavors. But also, all these other concepts that I've mentioned, they all build on top of each other. You can't be good at one and then just fail at the other, because that doesn't do anything for you. You have to be very good at all of these concepts. You have to know how to work in a group. You have to know how to deal with conflict. You have to know how to be a group member. And you have to know how to be persuasive and effective communicator. And that's what this course emphasized so well. So if I had to give myself like a score at the beginning of the semester, probably would have given myself something like a 3, because I really didn't know all these fundamental basics that are the building blocks of communications. I didn't even know that they really existed. I didn't know that communication was such an intricate thing. Like, I knew it, but I didn't really comprehend it. For example, in chapter 4, talking about the difference between hearing and actually listening to someone. So I feel like over the course of the semester, I have become a better listener. I've always heard what people said, but at this point I can perceive what they're saying and actually understand it. I'm actually listening to them. And in chapter 3, they talk about nonverbals. I was horrible with nonverbals. I didn't know that nonverbals were actually communicators. I didn't know that if I was like standing with my arms crossed or crossing my legs during a presentation that it like gave off a bad vibe. I knew it, but again, I didn't really comprehend the impact that it had on a presentation. And in chapters 11 through 13, it talks about building your message and like the details and the outlines and everything that has to go into like building an effective message and how you're going to present that message to your audience. I didn't understand the importance of all these little things that go into building an effective message. And now after Com 107 and reading the book, I really feel like I know how to construct and present my message in the most effective way that I can. So after learning all of these things, I would probably give myself something like a 6, because of course I still don't know everything to know that there is to know in communication, and I know that I still have so much to do and I have so much to learn, but I'm going to apply these things that I do know and the things that I have learned to my everyday life and hopefully become like a more average 6 score communicator. But I strive to be at a 10 one day. However, if I had to choose my biggest improvement, I think it would be my fidgeting. I used to be such a fidgeter at the beginning of the semester, and I think that's because I wasn't so confident in my communication skills. I was nervous every time I presented. But after taking Com 107, I feel much more confident in the message that I'm trying to convey, and I think that's led to a decrease in fidgeting because I feel more sure in myself. I think I know what I'm doing, and it just goes much more smoothly, and I feel no need to fidget like I used to. If I had to pick the most important thing that I learned in the entire course, it would probably be the idea that you cannot not communicate, in the words of Professor May, meaning that you are communicating even when you think you're not. So that applies to everyday life, relationship, professional life, academic life. Your nonverbals sometimes speak louder than your actual verbal message. I feel like I can walk away from this class knowing that I can make my message effective, and I can make people believe me, and they'll listen to me and I'll listen to them. I overall feel like a better communicator, and thank you for everything that you've taught me and everything you've done to get me in that position.